Welcome back to Money Misfits. I am Professor Heath, and we are in detention again today. And this episode really is like being in detention because we're talking about budgeting. And I get it, like budgeting sounds like punishment and detention, but here's the deal. If you want to be an asshole for the rest of your life, then go ahead and tune out. But if you're tired of being broke all the time or acting surprised when your credit card's declined at the cash register, then this episode's for you. Because budgeting, like if you're rich and you can do whatever you want, you don't have to fucking budget, right? You could do whatever you want. But if you're scraping by paycheck to paycheck and you don't have money to do whatever you want, then doing really cool things is going to require a little bit of planning. And this episode is more about figuring out ways to do cool things than it is about detention or punishment. Budgeting is the tool to accomplish great things. Okay, so the outline for this episode will be, how do I even get started? Part 2 is probably, where does my money go? Part 3, how do I save without feeling restricted? That's an important one I want to address. Part 4, handling emergencies and having peace of mind or having money set aside for peace of mind. Part 5 is, how do I go from college to my first real job, like that jump in income? How do I address that? There's a lot that goes on with that, but with respect to budgeting, I want to just address the budgeting aspect of moving up income levels, especially from college to your first job. And then I actually don't want to start, I want to end with leveling up, right? So talking about some of the specific ways that you can budget, the tools and types of budgets that are out there, so that after you get started, once you get into the thick of things, you can then sort of take yourself to the next level. Okay. So let's get started. Let's talk about, what is it that I need to do to begin budgeting? Like, what are the first fucking things that I have to even think about? Okay. And so when it comes to budgeting, my sense is that the first thing we want to do is just become aware of what we're spending money on. Okay. We're not going to try to fix anything. We're not going to try to sit down, create this overly complicated budget. I'm literally just going to like open up my bank account and just look at what I'm spending my money on. Okay. Just being aware of what I'm spending my money on. Right. So a lot of times we're not actually broke. Or just untracked, and being untracked at times makes us feel like we're broke. And so I really want us to get comfortable with being aware of what we're spending on. And so like the immediate action plan would be to just open up the banking account and then just looking over the last 7 days, just sort of pay attention to what you've been spending your money on. Like, is there anything in there that shocks you? Is there anything that surprises you? Is it consistent with what you were thinking? Guaranteed there were going to be some moments when you're like, man, I can't believe how much money I'm spending on that particular item. Food is always one of the key line items that most people become shocked by how much they're spending on. But that is literally first step. When we want to learn how to budget, let's just be aware of what we're spending our money on. Let's start there. Step 2 is, where is my money going, right? So a theme that came up in a number of different episodes has to do with subscriptions and reoccurring fees, right? So I believe I was talking with Michael and Umit, and even Sophia actually, about automatic transfers or automatic renewals and reoccurring fees, right? So subscriptions to Netflix, it could be a gym, right? But these reoccurring fees, a lot of us sign up for things and we sort of forget about them. And we don't realize that those companies are continuing to siphon money out of our accounts on a monthly basis. This reoccurring fee, I know I look at mine and I'm always shocked at what I see. And in fact, getting ready for this episode, I opened up my own bank account and I was looking at a lot of my transactions, and fucking Google is taking $2 out of my account every month. And I don't know how long they've been doing that, but it's like something that I don't even notice. And I know that it doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal because it's only $2, but that's the key, right? It's really easy to sign up for things where we end up paying recurring fees. And when we are not paying attention to what we're actually spending our money on, we don't realize that we're getting charged for things that we're not using. And so, second thing that I would encourage you to do after becoming aware of what you're spending your money on, identify some reoccurring fee that you don't use and cancel it. Cancel that subscription. And however much money you were spending on that particular transaction, send that to your savings account. Okay. So if you're spending $10 on some reoccurring fee, cancel the reoccurring fee and then just continue to pay yourself that $10 every month. Set up automatic transfer so that $10 that would have gone to some vendor instead goes to your savings account and make it automatic. The same way that the vendor made their siphon of your account automatic. If it works for them in a very sophisticated way, then you should make it work for you in a very simple way. Okay, part three, right? This idea that we have to balance saving and spending. I think Diana said in our episode that I want to save, but I also want to live. Like she said it perfectly, right? Again, if you don't want to save, then you're more than welcome to go back to being an asshole. Okay. But if you do want to accomplish great things, we do have to save. So there has to be some element of budgeting that relates to actually saving. Okay. And so we don't have to be super restrictive. We don't have to be saving every single dollar that we're making. We want to be able to spend money consistently with what our priorities are. Like we want to have fun day to day. We don't want to be miserable. But again, we also want to be establishing good savings habits, right? There has to be some middle ground. Okay. Real freedom is going to be somewhere within the bounds. Okay. And so just create some structure, some structured savings approach. It could be $25, it could be $50 that you send to your savings account and you make that an automatic transfer. And then you also have 50, 100, 25, whatever it is, dedicated to spending and having fun. Like you're just going to spend that money on whatever you want. Okay. But the idea is we want to get comfortable with the idea that some of our income really should be going to our savings account. That really is the ultimate goal of budgeting. And again, it's not that we are trying to be restrictive, but we are trying to accomplish bigger and better things than just mindlessly spending our money day to day, paycheck to paycheck. Part four, a common thing that's come up across multiple episodes has been this idea of an emergency fund and blowing through it much faster than students had anticipated. Okay, so general rule is we want to establish an emergency fund that's equal to about 3 to 6 times the amount that we spend per month. So I think I said in a previous episode, if we're spending $1,000 a month, then we want to have an emergency fund equal to about $3,000 to $6,000. And we don't have to try to figure that out overnight. We can slowly and methodically move in that direction. But having an emergency fund is like a massive adult move, right? So it's creating this opportunity for us to fall back to a safety net to take care of us when things like unexpected come up. And rather than the unexpected creating chaos, we have this buffer that we can fall back into. Okay, so it's like a peace of mind fund. In fact, I would even create a savings account and I would call it like peace of mind or emergency. And again, the goal is to fund that with about 6 months worth of, at best, 6 months worth of spending. At a minimum, it should be somewhere around three months. And you can build up to that, right? So again, you can set up automatic transfer so that money goes to the savings account consistently every month. And the more that we automate that habit, the more likely it is that at some point we do finally reach the 3 month threshold or the 6 month emergency threshold. And the idea behind the threshold is that it really allows us to avoid having to fall back onto credit cards and incurring these huge credit card fees in times of need. Okay, so a huge issue as it relates to budgeting as a college student, issue 5 is this transition from being a student to your first full-time working job. Okay. So a lot of times we're broke in college. And so when we move into our first job, we feel like, man, there's all these things that I had envisioned doing when I started making money. I was going to buy a better car. I was going to move to a better neighborhood and I was going to start wearing nicer clothes. There's all these things that we envision doing as we start to make more money. Okay. And so one of the things that we want to really pay attention to with respect to conscious spending and budgeting as we progress through life is when we make these big leaps, okay, from one level to another. When we make these big leaps, a lot of us kind of blindly go through that and feel like, hey, I can afford the better car or the better apartment or the better clothes. And what we do is we make more, we then end up spending more. And so what we do, or what I'm encouraging you to do, is when you move up the income ladder, you want to make sure that whatever increase in your income, you have a spot or a priority for that income. So if you move from, let's say you're in your career, you're making $60,000 and then you move up to 65,000, right? So the second year of your career, you're now making an extra 5,000. The question is, where do you want that 5,000 to go to? Because that 5,000, right? You lived without it the previous year. So you have the ability to really be intentional about how you spend that extra 5,000. Okay. And so the issue is called lifestyle creep, and it's something that will follow you throughout your entire life. And what we want to do is we just want to be conscious about how when we make more, we're not necessarily blindly spending more. Okay. Again, it's about awareness and it's about being intentional with the way that we spend our money. And increases in income give us an opportunity to either fund our current priorities, put more aside for those, or identify new options. Okay, I'll leave you with leveling up, right? This may seem like a basic episode, but being aware of what you're spending your money on is going to provide huge, huge benefits to you. And then canceling subscriptions, huge benefit to you. Creating a savings account and then establishing an emergency fund. All of those things may sound simple, but they have like unlimited potential. Okay. And so once we get the basics, which we just talked about, then it's time to level up. You want to move to maybe a more sophisticated approach to budgeting. Okay. There's specific types of budgeting that you can move to, right? So the traditional one that a lot of people use, the one that's very popular these days, has to do with the 50, 30, 20 rule, right? So you're saying that 50% of your income should go to things that you need, and 30% should go to wants, and 20% should go to savings or investing. That's a great approach for a lot of people. Okay. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to use that specific approach. We're all kind of different in the way that we are comfortable with keeping track of our spending. For me personally, the 50, 30, 20 rule, it kind of sucks. I personally like highly detailed budgets. So when I was your age, I loved what we call the zero-based budgeting, where you literally have line items for everything that you spend money on: food, entertainment, clothes, housing, cell phones. But you keep track of every single line item. And for me, I liked it because I'm highly detailed as it relates to money, maybe not some other things. But that is not a great approach for everybody. Okay. So somebody who hates numbers, hates keeping track of stuff, they could use a third approach that's referred to as pay yourself first. And pay yourself first is like, fuck it. I'm just going to spend money on whatever I want to spend money on, as long as I set aside first money to be saved and invested. And the general rule is we want to put at least 10 to 15% of our income to that. And then whatever we do with the rest, okay, the pay yourself first approach is like, fuck it. Just go spend your money on whatever you want. If you want to go drive a nice car and live in a shitty neighborhood, do it. As long as you are paying yourself first, meaning every time you get paid, you automatically transfer 10 to 15% of your paycheck to your savings or your investing account. Okay. There are there's plenty of approaches. There's apps that you could use, right? But the goal behind budgeting really is we have to move away from blindly spending our money, right? We have to pay attention to the things that are hitting our accounts, and we have to try to make improvements to how we spend our money. We want to incrementally, once we get started, we want to incrementally move some of the money away from things that aren't really that important to us. They provide value, but they're not totally important. They're not something that I absolutely have to do, right? I want to take money out of those buckets and put them in the buckets that I really want to do, right? So if I really want to go on vacations and I really want to go on nice vacations, I could be taking money out of my Starbucks spending and putting it into my saving for vacation bucket. And again, the budget is going to help us figure out how much have we been spending month to month on particular things, and how can we improve our behavior moving forward so that we spend less on those particular things in order for us to save more for the things that are more difficult to attain. That's budgeting.